understand it, General Marion then led Colonel Tarleton on a merry chase over a twisted route, crisscrossing the countryside, much of it through trackless swamps. Finally, after 7 hours of unsuccessful pursuit, Colonel Tarleton decided to call a halt and end his attempt to capture General Marion. Referring to the general as that old fox, Colonel Tarleton reportedly said that Devil himself could not catch him. That story soon spread through the countryside, and it was not long before people all up and down the Santee were referring to General Marion as the Swamp Fox. Now, we had been most grateful and relieved when Colonel Tarleton and his men left Big Home. But our relief was short-lived, for they did return. And Colonel Tarleton was not best pleased to have had his opportunity to capture General Marion spoiled because of a Richardson. And he decided to punish us all. He allowed his men to rampage through the house, plundering and looting as they went. He ordered the children and me outside, marched us up here to the graveyard, to the place where General Richardson had been buried but 6 weeks before. To my horror and shock, I heard him order his men to exhume the general's body. The children and I watched in horror as the casket was opened and we was forced to look on the remains of a beloved father and husband. Colonel Tarleton explained that he wanted the body exhumed because he wanted to look on the face of a man of high character, a man of whom everyone spoke so highly. It is to be sure, is it not, that he would never see such a face reflected in his own mirror. But it was not so. They was looking for the family silver, having plundered the house and not found any, and thinking that a man of the general's standing was sure to have some silver plate about, they decided that we had hid it in the general's coffin. But they were sadly mistaken, for it was not there. After forcing my household slaves to fix him dinner, Colonel Tarleton ordered his men to round up the animals on the plantation, the cattle, the swine, the poultry, and herd them all into the barn where the grain from our harvest was stored. They then set fire to it, along with the house and all the outbuildings. I watched with tears in my eyes as everything we owned went up in flames that night. I would rather have been flogged than to have had the barn, the crops, the animals, the house burned. It was November. The nights are cold that time of year. We was forced to huddle around a small fire in the open air. No blankets, no food, no shelter, no means of transport. The memory of that night will remain with me till my dying day. As I tried to comfort my sons that night, I could not help but remember my husband's words when he returned from putting down the Loyalist uprising in the West, that he and Colonel Thompson had adopted a policy of firmness, tempered with forbearance and leniency, which he thought had had a good effect, that he would not burn, plunder, destroy, lay waste, and seize on private property, for that would leave women and children to suffer and perish. And I was grateful that no Tory woman or child ever suffered such treatment from an army commanded by my husband. But we were not the only ones to suffer. Many of you did also, and I know you have not forgot it. From Jack's Creek to the high hills, the British burned plantations and crops. 30 plantations in all was burned, and it mattered not whether the owners were Tory or Whig, for Colonel Tarleton was determined that it be obvious to all Carolina that what he termed treachery and perfidy would be punished by instant fire and sword. Ladies and gentlemen, I do beg your pardon. That is in the past, is it not? And it does not do to dwell at great length upon the past. Let us repair to the house and partake of some refreshment. And there we will raise our glasses high in a toast to General Richard Richardson, a brave and honorable man. I have to confess to a little, probably error here. I do not think there was a 10th year commemoration of the death of General Richardson. And I know that Dorothy's oldest son, James, did put up monuments to both his mother and father, but I don't think he did it in 1790, so you'll have to excuse my little. I have to have a reason to be talking to people, and that's the hardest thing of all, is to come up with something that's even remotely feasible. Does anyone have any questions? I do want to read you what he wrote on the tombstone for his mother, because it's very sweet. So does anyone have a question before I do that? Okay. I didn't want to try to memorize this, so I'll have to read it. Dorothy died in, Dorothy died in July of 1793. She was 56 years old. And her son put up this monument to her. To the memory of Mrs. Dorothy Sinclair Richardson, relict, that's an old-fashioned word for widow, of General Richard Richardson, who died 6th of July, 1793, aged 56 years. She was pious and exemplary, distinguished in mind and manners, and eminently discernible in the highest societies in which she associated. This marble, which designates the place where her remains rest, is erected to her memory by her eldest son, James B. Richardson, who early bereft of parental care, his father was 10 when he died, feels that he is indebted to her maternal care and attentions, to her vigorous and persevering mind of firmness and determination surpassing description, and to her vigilant and enlightened instructions for being all that he is in life. James and Richardson went on to be governor of South Carolina from 1802 to 1804. Dorothy's second son, John Peter Richardson, her grandson, John Peter Richardson, the son of her second son, was governor from 1840 to 1842. And her great-grandson, another John Peter Richardson, was governor from 1886 to 1890. Her granddaughter, Elizabeth Richardson Manning, who was the daughter of John Peter Richardson, is the only woman in United States history to be related to 6 governors. She was the niece, wife, sister, mother, aunt, and grandmother of 6 South Carolina governors.